Simon Gorringe. I'm the CEO of Andalas Energy and Power. What I'd like to do is explain a little bit about the company. We are an oil and gas exploration company with focus here in the UK and in Indonesia. Stefania mentioned I took over as CEO back in April, and since then I've been very much focusing on the strategy and the general focus for the company going forward. What we're looking to do is build a substantial E&P company, and I'll explain a bit about how we intend to do that. And we're looking to get deliver some consistent value drivers to shareholders in the short term and in the long term. In terms of our team, we're a very small team. All of us are seasoned oil and gas specialists. I myself have been working in the oil industry for the last 40 years, mainly actually here in the UK, but in the noughties and this decade I've been spending a lot more time out in Asia. I spent quite a bit of time in Indonesia and Vietnam, which probably gives you an indication of some of the assets we've been looking at. But I'm supported by a very strong team which covers all the areas of an oil and gas company. And I should say that right now we are a very small cap. Our market cap is 2.5 million. We're listed on AIM. I think we're trading at 0.85p. But over the last 8 months we've been doing a number of placings and raises to support the portfolio we've been acquiring. As I said, the team's multidiscipline. It provides all the skill sets that we need to put deals together. My area of speciality is actually developing oil and gas fields. I take discoveries through to full commercialization, and I've worked with the large majors like the Conocos and the BHPs, and during the noughties working for the small independents. But I'm supported by Ross Warner, who's our legal and commercial director, Dan Jorgensen, who's our finance director, and we've got Greg Mawini, who's our VP of operations based in Indonesia. In terms of our strategy, it's a two-country strategy, which people ask why. Indonesia and the UK. Indonesia, for those that may know Asia, I mean that part of Indonesia has been in the news quite recently. But Indonesia is a large hydrocarbon basin. There's a lot of production in Indonesia. I think there's a lot of debate about whether it's between Romania or Indonesia as the actual founding of the oil industry. So there's a lot of oil and gas, onshore and offshore. If any of you know Indonesia, it has a certain risk profile. In terms of actually technical risk, finding oil and finding gas, it's very low. I often jokingly say if you take a scaffold pole and drive it into the ground, you can probably light at the end of the scaffold pole. It's not difficult to find hydrocarbons in Indonesia. The challenge is dealing with the commercial and the regulatory framework, and things do take a long time in Indonesia. So by having a two-country strategy, I came back to the UK in March to take over the role as CEO, and was very pleasantly surprised to see the amount of activity here in the UK in the oil and gas sector. And we made an acquisition, and we've been making more acquisitions. What do I like about the UK? Well, there's significantly larger sizes of opportunity, but I just like the fact there's a lot of activity. But the difference between the two-country strategy is in Indonesia, we're very much focused in onshore oil and gas production. In the UK, we're interested in offshore oil and gas production. And I'll explain a bit more about the asset base. In terms of what we've been doing over the last 8 months, as I said, I took over in April. We've been doing a lot of fundraising supported by our long-term shareholders, and that has helped to underpin the asset base that we've been building up. We've been acquiring an asset here in the UK via investing into a vehicle called Eagle. That was the acquisition of an interest in the Badger prospect, and I'll explain what that is. Then we made an acquisition, starting an acquisition in Indonesia called the Bungamas PSC. And then just recently we announced our taking an interest in the Coulter prospect. So what are we about? Well, in the oil and gas industry, it's all about moving the asset up the value chain. And those of you may or may not be familiar with the oil industry, we start off talking about exploring for oil and gas, and there's a certain risk profile with exploration. We then move, once we've discovered the oil or the gas, we then move it into what's called an appraisal phase, where we're trying to determine the size of the prize, and then we go into the development phase, and then ultimately we go into production. Now, at each of those points, there's an exit for us, exit for shareholders. And so what we're looking to do is move assets up the value chain. So we've got 3 assets that we've been acquired over the last 8 months, or in the process of acquiring. The first one we acquired back in April, Badger, which is a UK exploration prospect in what's called the Southern North Sea, and I'll explain where that is. We've got an appraisal project, which was the most recent acquisition, which we invested into, called Coulter, and that's just off Poole Harbour. And Bungamas PSC is a development opportunity that we've managed to get our toe on in Indonesia. Each of those we're moving forward, and we have the funds to move those forward in the short term. In terms of physically where they are, again, I don't know how familiar you are with the UK. The UK is split into southern North Sea area, central North Sea and northern North Sea. We've got west of Shetland, and down here we've got an area down in Poole Harbour. We invested into Badger. This is an exploration prospect. It's significant size. We talk in terms of billions of cubic feet of gas, and this is about 400 billion cubic feet of gas, and that's equivalent to just under 70 million barrels. We've invested into Eagle, which owns the company called Hollywell, who has an interest in that field. And so our sort of economic interest is about 16% of the 70 million. But I have to say that's an exploration prospect, which means it has to be drilled. And as part of the work program that's just been completed, we have to do what's called a seismic interpretation that defines the size of the prize. And we're in discussions with the OGA, which is the regulatory body that manages licenses here in the UK, as to the next step, as to whether we move into the drilling phase. The last acquisition we made just recently was taking an 8% interest in Coulter. This is a very exciting opportunity that we managed to get our toe on. This is about to be drilled, or should I say it's about to be drilled in the next 2 months. This is actually going to take place just off Poole Harbour, just to the west of the Isle of Wight. And this is going to be drilling an appraisal well, which will then be plugged and abandoned, but that will hopefully prove up the 22 million barrels that the operator is forecasting, and we've got 8% of that. So the focus here in the UK is offshore, and the focus in Indonesia is onshore. Again, I don't know how familiar you are with Indonesia, but this island that's shown here is the island of Sumatra, which is the westernmost island in the archipelago. And we are in the process of acquiring 100% interest in a fairly small prospect development opportunity in the Bungamas PSC. It looks small, but what we like about it is the upside. And what we're planning on doing there is a work program we're putting together, which will lead to us ultimately getting into production. So what we're looking to do is using Indonesia as a cash generator that will grow the company, and we like the excitement of the UK, where there are a lot of opportunities that we're identifying as we go forward. So in terms of the near term, for us, what's exciting for us is the drilling of the Coulter prospect, hopefully in the next couple of months. We're going to be completing on what's called the Bungamas PSC in the near term, and we'll be giving updates to the market on the Badger license. But going forward in the future, we're looking to plan an appraisal well on the Bungamas PSC, and then there's getting the feedback from the OGA on the outcome of the Badger prospect. And then we're looking at, and continue to look at, other opportunities here in the UK and in Indonesia that match our investment strategy. So in summary, just starting out, I think for us it's been an interesting 8 months. We've achieved a lot. We've managed to put our toe on 3 very exciting assets, but there's more to come. And that's all I was going to say about Andalas. Thank you very much. Sorry, I should say any questions.
Thank you. What is the approximate cash expenditure per month you have to bear?
What is the
cash expenditure per month you are
In terms of our overheads, G&A, I mean, I think these are all reported. I mean, we're talking about 60 to 90,000, depends on the activities that's going on at any point in time. I mean, we have a very small team, but we have a bunch of consultants we bring in as and when required to allow during the due diligence period of each of the activities we're looking at.
And what is your cash reserve at the moment?
Well, I can't disclose that at this point in time. We're just about to put our interims out, but we have the funds we need in the short term to meet the work programme.
Thank you.
Hi Simon, is this going to develop as a portfolio investment business or as an operator?
Ultimately, operator. I should have just said that in Indonesia, we don't do anything unless we're taking the operating position. Here in the UK, we're happy to take initially a small working interest, but in Indonesia, we take a controlling interest. Because of the nature of the business there, we have to be in control. So ultimately, operator. And we're about to be going on the license here in the UK, on the Coulter license, so that we can work towards ultimately being operator under the eyes of the OGA here in the UK.
Thanks, Simon. I'm a shareholder, by the way. Might add long suffering. We'll get into that afterwards. I'm on a Twitter group actually, and for Andalas, there's a number of questions, so I won't go all of them because we'll speak afterwards. But one was about, are you looking to buy shares in the company when you're out of the closed period?
Am I looking to buy
Yeah.
shares? Well, I'm always interested in getting shares. It's not. I can't sit here and say I am going to buy shares, but I'm always interested. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.